My name is Robert, and I've been married to Laura for 37 years. We've been through everything together, raising 2 kids, building our life, weathering the storms that life threw at us. I always believed that our marriage was solid, built on trust and love. Last night, that belief came crashing down. The evening started like any other. I got home from work around 6, as I usually do. Laura was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The comforting aroma of her signature chicken casserole filled the house. Everything seemed normal, but something felt off. She was unusually quiet. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she set the plates on the table. At first, I chalked it up to tiredness or stress, but deep down, I could sense something wasn't right. We sat down to eat, and the silence between us felt heavy. Laura barely touched her food, pushing it around on her plate as if it were some chore. I tried to make small talk, but her responses were short, distant. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Laura, is everything okay? You've been quiet all evening," I said, trying to sound casual, though my heart was already pounding. She froze for a moment, her fork hovering mid-air. Then she slowly set it down and looked up at me. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. "Robert," she began, her voice shaky, "there's something I need to tell you, something I've been hiding for a long time." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. My appetite vanished, replaced by a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. "What is it?" I asked, cautiously, my voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath, her hands clutching the edge of the table as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. "I don't even know where to start," she said, tears welling in her eyes. I leaned forward, my palms sweaty. "Just say it, Laura," I urged. "Whatever it is, just tell me." Her eyes locked with mine, and in that moment I could see the weight of whatever she was about to say crushing her. She inhaled deeply before speaking. "Before we got married, there was someone else," she said, her voice trembling. "Someone I loved deeply. His name was David." The name hung in the air between us like a ghost. I felt my chest tighten, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Everyone has a past," I told myself. "This didn't have to be a big deal." "Okay," I said, slowly. And she hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table. "Robert, I didn't tell you everything about my past. David and we had a history, and before I met you, I thought he was the love of my life." I felt a pang of jealousy, but I pushed it aside. "That was a long time ago," I said. "We've been married for 37 years, Laura. Why bring this up now?" Her hands were trembling now, and she clenched them into fists to steady herself. "Because he's back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stared at her, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean, he's back?" "He contacted me," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "A few months ago, he found me online and reached out. He said he needed closure, and he wanted to talk." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "And you talked to him?" I asked, my voice rising. She nodded, looking away. "I didn't know what to do. I thought it would just be one conversation, but it wasn't. We've been talking and meeting." The word meeting made my stomach churn. "Meeting?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "What does that mean, Laura? Are you saying you've been seeing him behind my back?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "It's not like that. I swear, Robert. It's just been lunches, conversations. I needed to understand, to find closure." "Closure?" I snapped. "After 37 years of marriage, you need closure with another man? What about me, Laura? What about us?" She broke down, sobbing into her hands. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I've been carrying this guilt for so long. I thought I could bury it, but when he came back, everything resurfaced. I didn't know how to tell you." I sat back in my chair, my head spinning. How could she keep something like this from me for so long? And why now, after all these years, was she choosing to bring it up? "You didn't know how to tell me?" I said bitterly. "Maybe you could have started with the truth, Laura, before it got to this point." She wiped her tears, her voice trembling as she said, "You have every right to be angry, but please, Robbers, don't shut me out. I love you. I always have. I need you to understand." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air," I said, grabbing my coat. "Robert, wait!" she called after me, but I was already out the door, the cold night air hitting me like a slap to the face. As I walked aimlessly down the street, the reality of her words sank in. Laura, my wife of 37 years, had been keeping a piece of herself hidden from me all this time. And now she had let that piece resurface, threatening to unravel everything we had built together. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same. The cold air bit at my face as I wandered aimlessly down the quiet streets. The world felt surreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life. My thoughts were racing, my chest tightening with each breath. Laura's words echoed in my mind. I've been talking to him and meeting him. I stopped at the corner of the park where we used to take the kids when they were little. The swings creaked in the breeze, a haunting reminder of the life we had built together. How could everything we shared now feel like it was built on sand? My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Laura. "Robert, please come home. I need to explain everything. We need to talk. I'm so sorry." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. But what could I say? That I was ready to listen? That I trusted her? Neither of those things was true. I put the phone back in my pocket and kept walking, the weight of her confession pressing down on me. Eventually, I found myself at a small diner on the edge of town. The neon sign flickered as I pushed the door open, the smell of coffee and greasy food hitting me like a wave. I slid into a booth at the back, trying to gather my thoughts. The waitress came over, her cheerful smile a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely audible. As she walked away, I thought about Laura's face when she told me the truth. The guilt, the fear, the tears. She was clearly in pain, but so was I. For 37 years, I had trusted her completely, and now that trust was shattered. When the coffee arrived, I stared into the dark liquid, trying to make sense of everything. Why had she reached out to him in the first place? What did she mean by closure? And how could she keep something so big from me for all these years? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Laura had taken away my choice. She had decided on her own that this was a secret I didn't need to know. And now, after all these years, she expected me to just understand? To forgive her? I didn't realize how long I'd been sitting there until the waitress came back. "Refill?" she asked, holding the coffee pot. "No thanks," I said, sliding out of the booth and leaving some cash on the table. I needed to face Laura, to hear her out, even if it hurt. When I got home, the house was dark, except for the soft glow of a lamp in the living room. Laura was sitting on the couch, her face pale and drawn. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Robert," she said, standing up. I held up a hand, stopping her. "Sit," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You said you want to explain. Now's your chance. Tell me everything, from the beginning." She nodded, her hands trembling as she sat back down. "I don't even know where to start," she said softly. "Start with why," I said, sitting across from her. "Why did you reach out to him? Why now?" She took a deep breath, her fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. "He found me," she said. "A few months ago, I got a message from him on social media. He said he wanted closure, that he needed to apologize for the way he left things all those years ago. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to respond, but I felt like I had to." "Had to," I said, my voice sharp. "Why? You've been married to me for 37 years, Laura. What could he possibly say that matters anymore?" She flinched at my tone, but pressed on. "It wasn't about him. It was about me. I realized I'd been carrying this weight for so long, Robert. The guilt, the shame. It's been eating away at me. I thought if I could talk to him, if I could get some closure, I could finally let it go." "And did you?" I asked bitterly. "Did you find your closure?" Tears filled her eyes. "No," she admitted. "It only made things worse. Seeing him again, talking to him, it brought back everything I thought I'd buried. And then I realized I couldn't move forward without telling you the truth." I leaned back in my chair, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. "So you've been meeting him. What does that mean, Laura? Lunches? Dinners?" "Just lunches," she said quickly. "Public places, nothing inappropriate, I swear. I needed to see him, to make peace with the past." I let out a bitter laugh. "You needed to make peace with the past? What about me, Laura? What about the man who's been by your side for nearly 4 decades? Did you think about what this would do to me?" "I thought about it every day," she said, her voice breaking. "But I was scared, Robert. Scared of how you'd react. Scared of losing you. I didn't want to hurt you." "Well, congratulations," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've succeeded in doing exactly that." She broke down, sobbing into her hands. I wanted to feel compassion, to reach out and comfort her, but I couldn't. The betrayal was too fresh, the wound too deep. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was her crying. Finally, she looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "I don't know how to fix this," she said softly, "but I want to. Please, Robert, tell me what to do." I shook my head, standing up. "I don't have an answer for you, Laura. Right now, I don't even know who you are." I walked upstairs to the guest room, leaving her sitting on the couch. As I closed the door behind me, I realized that the life I thought I knew was gone, and I had no idea what would come next. The silence in the guest room felt suffocating. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every word Laura had said. The confession, the secrecy, the justifications. It all felt like a slow-motion car crash I was powerless to stop. For 37 years, I had believed we were unshakable, that no matter what, we were a team. And now, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Laura sitting across from me, her face pale, her hands trembling, telling me she had been meeting another man, her first love, the man she once thought was her future. And she had done this behind my back, believing she had the right to decide when I got to know. By morning, my thoughts hadn't settled. If anything, they had turned into a storm I couldn't quiet. When I finally dragged myself downstairs, Laura was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. The dark circles under her eyes told me she hadn't slept either. She looked up the moment she heard me. "Robert," she said hesitantly, "can we talk?" I sighed, pouring myself a cup of coffee before sitting across from her. "I don't even know what to say to you, Laura," I admitted. "I don't know where to start." She swallowed hard, gripping her mug. "I don't expect you to be okay. I don't even expect you to forgive me right now. But please, just tell me what you're thinking. I need to know." I let out a bitter laugh. "What I'm thinking?" I repeated. I'm thinking that I've been married to a woman who's been keeping secrets from me for 37 years. I'm thinking that you've been making decisions about our marriage all by yourself. And I'm thinking that I don't even know if I can look at you the same way anymore." Her face crumpled, and for a moment I almost felt guilty. Almost. "Robert," she whispered, "I love you. That's never changed. Please believe me." I shook my head. "Love isn't just words, Laura. Love is trust. Love is honesty. Love is respect. And you didn't respect me enough to tell me the truth. Instead, you kept it hidden until it blew up in our faces." She wiped her tears, her hands shaking. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared that you'd leave me, that you'd look at me differently." I let out a humorless chuckle. "And what? You thought keeping it from me would prevent that from happening? Because right now, I do see you differently." Her breath hitched, but she didn't argue. Maybe because she knew I was right. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the kitchen was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, I broke the silence. "Tell me one thing, Laura," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "If the roles were reversed, if I had been secretly meeting a woman from my past, telling her things I didn't tell you, making peace with my old wounds, would you be able to sit here and tell me it was just closure?" Her face went completely still. I saw the way her fingers tightened around her coffee mug, how her breathing changed. "No," she admitted after a long pause. "I wouldn't be able to." I nodded, as if I had just confirmed something I already knew. "Then you understand why I feel like this, why I don't know how to move forward from this." She exhaled shakily. Do you want me to leave for a few days? Give you some space?" I wanted to say yes, to tell her to pack a bag and give me room to think. But at the same time, the thought of coming home to an empty house, knowing she was somewhere else because of this, made my stomach turn. "No," I said finally. "I don't want you to leave. But I also don't know if I can pretend everything is okay, because it's not." She nodded slowly, wiping at her face. "I understand." But did she? Could she really understand what it felt like to have your world turned upside down overnight? I finished my coffee and stood up. "I need time, Laura. I need to figure out where we go from here." She didn't argue. She just nodded, her expression filled with a sadness I couldn't even begin to process. As I walked away, I realized something. For the first time in 37 years, I didn't know if our marriage would survive. And the worst part? Neither did she. The following days felt like walking through a fog. I went through the motions, woke up, showered, made coffee, read the news. But everything felt distant, like I was watching someone else live my life. Laura and I barely spoke. We existed under the same roof, but we were strangers now. When we did speak, it was about practical things, whether I had eaten, if the bills had been paid, if we needed groceries. But the real conversation, the one that hung between us like an unspoken storm, never came. I caught her watching me sometimes, like she was waiting for me to say something, anything, that would give her a sign of where we stood. But I had nothing to give her. I felt exhausted all the time, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured her sitting across from him. What did they talk about? Did she laugh at his jokes the way she laughed at mine? Did she tell him things she hadn't told me? The thought of it made my stomach turn. By the third night, the silence had become unbearable. After dinner, another meal eaten in near silence, I finally broke. "Do you regret it?" I asked, setting my fork down. Laura looked up, startled. "Regret what?" I met her eyes, my expression unreadable. "Meeting him, talking to him, do you regret it?" She hesitated, and that hesitation felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "I regret hurting you," she said finally. "I regret how I handled it. But," she trailed off, searching for the right words, "I don't regret facing that part of my past. I needed to." I exhaled, shaking my head. That's not what I wanted to hear. She flinched, pushing her plate away as if she had lost her appetite. "Robert, I'm not going to lie to you anymore. I can't undo what I did, but I can tell you that you are my future. You always have been." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "You say that, but how do I believe it? How do I know that if he reaches out again, you won't feel the need to face your past some more?" Her face paled. "He won't. I ended it. I told him I couldn't talk to him anymore, that my husband deserves better." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But trust, once broken, isn't easily restored. "I don't know if I can move past this, Laura," I admitted. "It's not just about what you did. It's about the choices you made. You kept something from me, and you decided when I was allowed to know. That's not how a marriage works." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know, and I hate myself for it." We sat there in silence, both of us knowing that words wouldn't fix this. "Robert," she said softly, "do you still love me?" That question should have had an easy answer, but in that moment, I wasn't sure anymore. I stood up from the table, unable to meet her gaze. "I need more time." She nodded, wiping at her face, but I could see the fear in her eyes. The fear that time wouldn't be enough. The truth was, I wasn't sure either. Days turned into a week, and in that week, Laura and I drifted further apart, even though we were still under the same roof. The air between us was heavy with things left unsaid. I tried to focus on work, on errands, on anything that would keep me from thinking about her confession. But no matter what I did, the thoughts crept in late at night when the house was silent. I would stare at the ceiling, remembering the way she had looked at me when she told me everything, how scared she had been, how broken. I wanted to be angry. I was angry. But there was something else creeping in alongside the anger: grief. I was mourning something I hadn't even realized I had lost: the trust I had in my wife. One evening, after another long, silent day, Laura finally spoke. "I miss you," she said quietly. I looked up from my book, my jaw tightening. "I'm still here, aren't I?" She flinched but nodded. "Physically, yes, but not really." I closed the book and set it aside. "What do you want me to do, Laura? Pretend like nothing happened? Pretend like everything is fine?" "No," she whispered. "I just want to know where we stand, where I stand with you." I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. "I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "Robert, if I could take it all back, I would. Not because I didn't need to face my past, but because of what it did to us." I studied her, my emotions a tangled mess. "You didn't think about that before?" She swallowed hard. "I did, but not in the way I should have. I convinced myself it wouldn't hurt you because I told myself it didn't change anything between us, but I was wrong." A bitter chuckle escaped me. "You were wrong. That's an understatement." Silence. Then she spoke again. "Do you still want this marriage?" That question hit me hard, harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Did I? Did I want to fix what was broken, or was I holding on to something that was already gone? "I don't know," I admitted finally. "I just don't know." Laura nodded slowly, as if she had been expecting that answer. "Then I'll wait," she said softly. "For as long as it takes, I'll wait." I wanted to tell her not to, that waiting wouldn't fix the damage, that some things, once broken, couldn't be repaired. But I didn't say any of that, because deep down, I wasn't sure if I wanted her to stop waiting. Days passed, And though Laura and I still lived in the same house, we were miles apart in every other way. Every conversation was short, every glance uncertain. She was waiting for me to decide, for me to say something that would tell her which way this was going to go. The problem was, I didn't know myself. One evening, I sat outside on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The quiet used to be something I loved. Now, it felt suffocating. I heard the door open behind me. Laura stepped outside, hesitant. "Can I sit?" she asked softly. I gestured to the empty chair beside me. "It's your house, too." She sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "Robert, have you thought about what you want?" I let out a slow breath. "That's all I've been thinking about, Laura." She bit her lip, and I ran a hand over my face. "I don't know how to just move on from this," I said. "I want to, but every time I look at you, I remember. And it makes me wonder how much of our life, how much of you I really knew." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "You knew me, Robert, the real me. What I did, it doesn't erase the life we built together." I turned to face her, "But it changes it. It changes how I see it. You made a decision for both of us. You decided I didn't need to know, that I wasn't strong enough to handle it, and that's what hurts most." She sniffed, wiping at her eyes. "You're right. I took that choice away from you, and I hate myself for it." I exhaled sharply. "I don't want you to hate yourself, Laura. I just want to understand why. Why was he so important that you needed to see him again? Why did you let him back into your life, even for a moment?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Because I was afraid that if I didn't face my past, I would never truly be free of it." I shook my head. "And did it work? Do you feel free now?" She let out a shaky breath. "No," she admitted, "because now I feel like I lost the one thing that mattered most. Us." I didn't respond, because I didn't know if she was right. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, because I was jolted awake by a noise. I sat up, my heart pounding. It was Laura. She was downstairs, crying. For a moment, I just sat there, listening. Then, against my better judgment, I got up and made my way down. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her face buried in her hands. She looked up when she heard me. "Robert," she whispered, her voice broken, and something inside me cracked. For the first time since this all started, I didn't see the woman who betrayed my trust. I saw my wife. The woman who had stood beside me for 37 years. The woman who had given me children, who had laughed with me, cried with me, built a life with me. The woman who was now terrified she was about to lose me. I sat down across from her. "Laura," I said quietly, "tell me, do you still love me?" Her eyes widened. "Yes," she said without hesitation, "with everything I have." I nodded slowly. "Then, we'll figure this out together." She broke into tears again, but this time they weren't just from sorrow. They were from hope. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt it too. The morning after that conversation, something felt different. The weight in the air hadn't lifted, but it had shifted. For the first time in weeks, Laura and I weren't just avoiding each other. We were facing something together. But facing it didn't mean it was fixed. Over breakfast, we sat in silence, sipping our coffee. Normally, silence between us had always been comfortable. But now it felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter everything we were trying to rebuild. Finally, Laura set her cup down and looked at me. "What happens now?" I exhaled, setting my own cup aside. "I don't know, Laura, but I do know that if we're going to try to move forward, I need honesty. No more omissions, no more protecting me from the truth. If there's anything else, anything you haven't told me, I need to know now." She swallowed hard, then shook her head. There's nothing else, Robert. That's everything. I promise. I studied her face, searching for any trace of hesitation. If she was still hiding something, this was her moment to come clean. But she held my gaze, unwavering. I nodded. Okay. She let out a shaky breath. Okay. That doesn't mean everything's fine, I clarified. It doesn't mean I don't still feel hurt. But I need to believe we can fix this. And that starts with knowing there's nothing left between us but the truth. Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time she didn't cry. She just reached across the table, hesitating before placing her hand on mine. I love you, Robert, she said, her voice steady, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you. I didn't pull away. I didn't squeeze her hand back either, but I let it stay there. It was a start. That evening, Laura suggested something unexpected. Would you come to therapy with me? She asked. I blinked at her. Therapy? She nodded. I know we can't just sweep this under the rug, and I know I can't fix this alone, but maybe with help we can figure out how to move forward together. I hesitated. The thought of sitting in a room with a stranger, pouring out the mess of emotions I hadn't even fully processed myself, felt overwhelming. But then I looked at Laura, at the woman who was willing to fight for our marriage, even if it meant facing uncomfortable truths. I sighed. All right, I said. Let's try. She smiled, a small, fragile smile. But for the first time, I could see something in her eyes I hadn't seen in weeks. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, I felt it too. The first therapy session was awkward. I won't pretend it wasn't. Sitting in a quiet office across from a woman who knew nothing about us felt strange. Laura sat beside me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I expected it to be uncomfortable. I expected to feel guarded. But what I didn't expect was for it to help. The therapist didn't take sides. She didn't make excuses for Laura, and she didn't tell me how to feel. Instead, she gave us space to speak, to say the things we hadn't been able to say at home. And for the first time, I truly listened. Laura spoke about the guilt she had carried for years, how she had convinced herself that avoiding the truth was better than facing it. She told me how when David reappeared in her life, it forced her to confront emotions she had buried long ago. Emotions that had nothing to do with love, but everything to do with unfinished pain. And I told her about the betrayal I felt, the doubt that had crept into our marriage like a shadow. I admitted that I had considered walking away, that part of me had wondered if we were too broken to fix. But as we sat there in that small office, something changed. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a step. The weeks that followed weren't easy, but they were different. Laura and I talked more, really talked, not just surface-level small talk. We spent time together, not as a couple trying to pretend nothing had happened, but as two people choosing to rebuild what was broken. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she reached for my hand. I let her take it. I know I don't deserve it, she said softly, but I'm grateful that you stayed. I squeezed her hand gently. I stayed because I believe in us. She smiled then, not a nervous, uncertain smile, but a real one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt it too. Months later, as I watched Laura laughing with our grandchildren in the backyard, I realized something. I still loved her. It wasn't the same love as before. It had changed, grown, become something stronger. She had broken my trust, but she had also fought for me, for us, and I had chosen to fight too. There was a time when I thought this betrayal would be the end of us, but maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something even better.